Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. Subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, the Pac-12 is another big game. You have Michigan State at Washington, but then here we got BYU traveling at Oregon. This is a huge game for the Pac-12 to look very good this weekend. They got two big games. Let's see if Oregon or BYU can win this game and who can get it done. BYU is 2-0 this season. Kalani Sitake is their head coach, and again, as I said before when they were previewing the Baylor BYU game, he's a great coach, and he's got BYU rolling right now in the post-Zach Wilson era, and that's really good for him as to keep his longevity as the head coach and keep BYU as a top independent school, even though they're going to be joining the Big 12 soon. What really helped BYU move up in the rankings, they beat South Florida 50-21 on the road. And then they won over Baylor 26-20, which I picked BYU, even though they had two of the receivers out and I didn't know about it. I picked BYU to beat Baylor, and they did get it done. That was a big win for BYU, and now BYU is up to 12th in the AP poll. That is huge news. Quarterback Jaron Hall, I don't think he's Zach Wilson's level of good and at the college level, but Jaron Hall is a really good quarterback, and he's doing really good for BYU. Chris Brown Jr. at running back. They did not run the football well against Baylor, but I don't think Baylor really allowed them to. I don't know if BYU's offensive line is probably the best to get the running lanes open, but he can play. Wide receiver Chase Roberts, he's caught a lot of passes so far this season from Jaron Hall's arm, and he's a great receiver. On the defensive side of the ball, linebackers Max Tooley, he gets tons of tackles. He's been the leading tackler, I think, in both games for BYU. Defensive lineman Caden Hawes and defensive back Caleb Hayes. BYU's got a good defense. They held Baylor to 20 points, and Baylor usually scores a lot more points than that with Dave Aranda. And BYU did win in overtime, too, over Baylor, and Baylor only had 20 points if you count that and overtime. That's good news for BYU's defense. On the Oregon side, Dan Lanning, the former defensive coordinator of Georgia, is now the head coach at Oregon, and this is very interesting because he played his former team in Georgia and got floored 49-3, and Oregon dropped out of the poll. They went from 11th to out of the poll, AP poll, and everybody was freaking out for Oregon. And then they go back around and beat Eastern Washington 70-14. They eased the waters a little bit, got Oregon back on level footing. They're now ranked 25th again, which really helps with the optics of this game to have both teams in the top 25. I think Oregon was just completely overmatched playing Georgia, obviously. They shouldn't have had to play that game in week one. I don't like the big week one games to begin with for a lot of these teams because they're not ready. I mean, I'm not saying if they play Eastern Washington, then they're going to beat Georgia. They're not going to beat Georgia anyway, but maybe it wouldn't have been 49-3. Bo Nix couldn't get comfortable. The quarterback for Oregon, who used to be the Auburn quarterback, and I will say about Bo Nix is a guy that he plays really good against bad competition. Last week against Eastern Washington, had 5 touchdowns. He barely had any incompletions. I think he only had 5 incompletions. But against Georgia, he had no chance, and Georgia swarmed him and didn't allow him to do anything. But Bo Nix, I know a lot of people at Oregon want Ty Thompson to be the starting quarterback. He's a 5-star freshman. But, I mean, I think Bo Nix is solid. I think him and Sean Clifford are kind of similar quarterbacks to me. Sean Clifford for Penn State. They're both quarterbacks that make mistakes, but they win games for you, but they can also lose games for you. I think that's where a lot of the hate goes Bo Nix's way. But Bo Nix is not the reason they lost to Georgia either. Running back, Marquise Irving, he can play, but he's not Travis Dye. Travis Dye for Oregon was much better as a running back. I'm not saying Marquise Irving can't play, but again, Travis Dye was a fantastic running back, but he transferred to USC. Wide receiver Troy Franklin, he led Oregon last week against Eastern Washington, and a lot of Oregon receivers had a lot of catches, but Troy Franklin led the way. And on the defensive side of the ball, linebackers Noah Sewell, linebackers Justin Flo are both fantastic linebackers for Oregon. Both will probably be playing on Sunday, especially Noah Sewell. Both are fantastic, like I said, and they couldn't stop Georgia, obviously, but will they be able to stop BYU? That's a different story. BYU can put up points, but I think Oregon's going to have a better chance to stop BYU than Georgia. And defensive lineman Casey Rogers is another good defensive player for Oregon. And very good, solid defensive line play for Oregon in general. They got a good defense. Oregon has a good defense. Again, they just could not stop Georgia because Georgia's offense is on a whole other level. But who's going to win this game? Both teams, to me, stack up fairly well. BYU's got talent on their roster, even though they're an independent. Oregon's got talent. They've had talent for a long time. Mario Cristobal left Dan Lanning a lot of talent. I know some of it transferred away, some to USC, some went pro. But like Kayvon Thibodeau's obviously not on the defense anymore for Oregon. But Oregon's still got a lot of talent. Bo Nix can play. And BYU did play a tough game against Baylor last week and won in overtime where Oregon had a cakewalk against Eastern Washington. That might help Oregon because Oregon essentially had a bye week between Georgia and BYU. Will that make a difference in this game? I really think it will. I think Oregon's going to want to come back around and play much better to prove that they're still a good team after getting floored against Georgia. Hopefully their confidence is back with the Eastern Washington game. I think BYU can win this game, and my gut wants to pick BYU because I think BYU has a lot of talent. I think Kalani Sitake's a great coach. I think they have talent. I think they can go to Autzen Stadium and win. But I am going to pick Autzen Stadium and the Oregon Ducks over BYU. I think Oregon's home crowd, the fact that Oregon had an easy opponent, and I think they're going to be able to hang with BYU better than Georgia. I think Oregon's going to win this game 31-28. It's going to be close. BYU could definitely win, but I think Oregon's home field advantage and a lot of confidence that they have after the Eastern Washington game, they're going to win 31-28. Subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about this BYU Oregon game and who you think is going to win and why. And I will see you next time.